tonight's class is sponsored by my parents, Mr. and Mrs. Max and Siggy Laredo, in honor of their youngest son, my brother Benjamin's bar mitzvah, which is going to be tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, here in Florida. So big mazel tov, and they are sponsoring tonight's class not only in honor of my brother Benjamin, but in honor of all the participants of this great weekly class that's been going strong now for a couple of years. So big mazel tov, and thank you everyone for joining us. Okay, we have now a new book. New beginnings are always exciting. Yes, we had not long ago Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Bereshit, a new beginning. But Hashem has specific intentions. He understands that new beginnings create inspiration to want to be better and to do things in the best of ways possible. And that's what the whole idea of a new month. It's a fresh start, new page, and every year is a chapter in our life, and our life is a book in and of itself. So too, when it comes to our Torah, the greatest book that mankind has ever seen, there are also chapters, Torah portions, but there are books within the book. And the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot, is the second book of our Torah. As an introduction to Reb Heyman's massive chidush that we're all going to benefit tremendously from, even in a practical way, which is my favorite part, is, as an introduction, all of the tribes passed away. So we're at a brand new beginning, literally a new generation. And the Torah tells us how the Jewish people have become numerous and they fill the land. And Paro and his advisors decide that they got to do something about this. They cannot allow the Jewish people to take over their land. After all, they are only guests, they are only refugees. And they had to figure out a way to reduce the number of Jews. So they made different decrees. They said that they can't go home to sleep at night. They worked them harder. They worked them longer hours. But the main decree, and that's which changed everything, was the decree that all the Jewish boys had to be thrown into the Nile River. Any new baby that was born, into the Nile River. And that intensified the entire concept of their slavery. That was true ownership, unfortunately, and very, very sad. Miraculously, and we'll get on into this later, on the later part of our class, but miraculously Moses was born, Moshe Rabbeinu, and he survived in a miraculous way. And at the age of 20, he leaves the palace, the home that he grew up in, and he sees an Egyptian man beating a Jewish man, almost about to kill him. And Moshe Rabbeinu looks at this and he says, I can't allow this to happen. And he intervenes and he kills the Egyptian, saving his Jewish brother. The next day, Moshe Rabbeinu comes out again from the palace and sees two Jews fighting with each other, the infamous Datan and Aviram, the two troublemakers that we see throughout our Torah. And he goes and he tells one of them, he tells him, why is it that you are hitting your fellow? So he looks at him and he tells him, are you any better? And Moshe Rabbeinu understood what he did, and understood that Datan and Aviram saw what he did yesterday. And Datan and Aviram actually went to snitch to Paro and told Paro what Moshe Rabbeinu did. And that put Moshe Rabbeinu in a very, very difficult situation. Such a difficult situation that he almost died because of that. Paro arrested him and was going to kill him. And the executor who was going to behead Moshe Rabbeinu, there was a great miracle, and Moses' neck became strong like a stone, and he was able to survive. And this caused him to have to run away, flee for his life, literally. Almost 60 years, let's say 60 years, he was away from Egypt. Until finally, yes, he runs away and he makes his way to Midian. He marries Tzipora. He's watching his father-in-law's sheep. He finds the burning bush. And then finally, God asks him to take on the task of being the messenger, the deliverer for the Jewish people, to get them out of slavery. And there was a 7-day negotiation between Moshe Rabbeinu and Hashem, and reluctantly, Moshe accepts the position. So this is the introduction that I would like to introduce with before we start with Leib. That's just a little bit of a synopsis to where I want to get us to. Now comes Leib. Take a look at your screen. We're in chapter 4 in Exodus, verse 1. This is in the middle of the negotiation that Hashem is trying to convince Moshe Rabbeinu to become the messenger, his messenger, to go free the Jewish people. Vayan Moshe, and Moshe answered Hashem. Vayomer, and he says, Vehen lo ya'aminu li. They're not going to believe me. V'lo yishmu be'koli. They're not going to listen to my voice. Ki yomeru, you know what they're going to say? Lo nira alecha Hashem. Hashem never appeared to you. This is all bluff, not for real. This is how Reb Leib starts. Reb Leib tells us, remember that Moshe Rabbeinu tells Hashem that the Jewish people are not going to believe me. This was indeed considered Lashon Hara, slander. That Moshe Rabbeinu spoke slander about the Jewish people to God. And he was punished. And he received leprosy. The Talmud in Masechet Shabbat, page 97a, tells us that one who suspects a good person for doing something wrong will suffer physically. How do we see this? Because right from this scenario, the Talmud proves it. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu that they will believe him. And Moshe said, no, they won't. Who's Moshe Rabbeinu to say no, they won't? And he was punished with leprosy. Hashem tells him, take your hand, put it in your chest, pull it out. It was white like leprosy, and put it back in, and it was healed. The Maharsha in the Talmud over there in Masechet Shabbat, one of the great commentaries in the Talmud, asks, he says, in truth, we see that the Jewish people only believed Moshe Rabbeinu after the signs Hashem gave him were performed. They first needed to see those miracles. Kind of like they would not have believed him until those miracles were shown. So why is it that Bnei Israel only believed Moshe Rabbeinu after those signs were performed? Furthermore, Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu those signs to show them, seeming like they needed them. And also, what is so wrong about Moshe Rabbeinu doubting if the Jewish people would believe him or not? It's a normal thing. They've been in the land of Egypt for 210 years. Who knows if there may have been bluffs before or not. But why would anyone just assume that they would believe, that Bnei Israel would believe Moshe Rabbeinu right away? Basically, the Maharsha is telling us, number one, those signs were used, and the Jewish people only believed them after the signs. Number two, Moshe Rabbeinu himself, what did he do so wrong by doubting if they would believe him or not? So Reb Leib answers so powerfully. He says, of course, it's a normal thing for Moshe Rabbeinu to doubt if Bnei Israel would have believed him or not. The issue was that Moshe Rabbeinu was not doubting if they would believe him or not. He was convinced. Reb Leib says that he was convinced that the Jewish people would not listen to him. How does he know this? Because the word vehen lo ya'aminu bi, and they will not believe me. The word hen in Hebrew is like the word hare, behold. It's not ulai lo ya'aminu li, maybe they're not going to believe me. Vehen, he said, and behold, they will not believe me. Moshe was convinced they wouldn't believe him. So the truth is, Moses was not doubting Bnei Israel. If he would have just been doubting them, nothing wrong. He wouldn't have done anything wrong. But since he was convinced that they would not believe him, that is considered, as the Talmud says, hachoshed bichsherim, a person who suspects kosher, good people, and that is prohibited. Reb Leib continues and he says that if Moses would have never doubted, now this is where it gets really, really deep. If Moses would have never doubted if the Jewish people would have believed him or not, they would have never even asked him for signs. If, on the contrary, if Moses would have been convinced that they would have believed him, there would be absolutely no need for the signs that Hashem sent him with the snake and the leprosy. No need at all. The only reason why the Jewish people asked Moshe Rabbeinu for those signs, for those proofs, was because Moshe Rabbeinu suspected them. Furthermore, because Moshe Rabbeinu doubted if the Jewish people would believe him or not, he had Aharon HaKohen, his brother, be the one who delivered the messages. And this was a mistake. It's clear from the verses. I want to share with you a couple of verses as Reb Leib does. And then we're going to just analyze, so what's the difference if Moshe Rabbeinu delivered the message or if Aaron delivered the message? Who really cares? But what Reb Leib is saying is because Moshe Rabbeinu doubted if the Jewish people would believe him or not, that's why he had Aaron give the message instead of him. Take a look at these verses. This is in chapter 4, verses 28, 29, 30, 31. Let's read these together. Verse 28. V'aged Moshe le'Aaron et kol divrei Hashem asher shelacho. So Moses tells Aaron everything that Hashem told him as he was sent. Ve'et kol ha'otot asher tzivao, and he showed him all the signs that he was commanded. This is at their first meeting. Vayelech Moshe ve'Aaron, and now Moses and Aaron, vayasfu et kol, they went and they gathered all the ziknei b'nei Israel, all the elders. Next verse, vaydaber Aaron et kol advarim, and then Aaron is the one who says everything that Hashem told Moses. Asher diber Hashem el Moshe. Vayas, who's the one making the signs? Aaron is the one making the signs, showing the signs to the Jewish people. And then in truth, verse 31, vayamin am, the Jewish people, they believed. Vaishmu, and they listened. Kipakad Hashem, and they listened to the fact that Hashem now is remembered the Jewish people. He saw their pain and their affliction, and they all bowed to Moshe and Aharon. Says Reb Leib, so we see first of all that Moses doubted if the Jewish people believe him or not. Because of that doubt, or not doubt, he was convinced they wouldn't believe him. He had Aaron be the one who share the messages and show the proofs and signs. Asks Reb Leib, what's the difference? If Moshe Rabbeinu is the one who shows the signs and gives the message, or if Aaron does, they're getting it anyways. They're getting the message one way or another. Reb Leib says it's a huge difference. Major difference if it's going to come from Aaron or from Moses. As the Talmud tells us, do you know how Moshe Rabbeinu used to teach Torah to the Jewish people throughout the desert, their time in the desert? Moshe Rabbeinu would first bring Aaron in. He would teach him that day's lesson. And then he would go out. Next is the elders would come and Moses would teach it again. First Aaron, then his children, then Aaron's children, then the elders, and then the rest of the Jewish people. Asks the Talmud in Masechet Eruvin, 1 second. Why, if Moshe taught Aaron already, let Aaron teach others as well. Why does Moshe have to teach it all himself? The Talmud says, since Moshe Rabbeinu learned the Torah directly from Hashem, it's much more powerful, it's stronger, it's more accurate when he's the one that is sharing it. So just as Moshe Rabbeinu had to be the one who shared the Torah that he learned, he should have been the one to share the message to the Jewish people when he came to them. Because you can never compare something as if it's a direct recount, or if it's like a recount of a recount. Like you are sharing something that was shared with you, or are you sharing something a first-hand account? That's a major difference. But if Moses, as Reb Leib, would have delivered the message himself, the Jewish people wouldn't even ask for any type of proof, and it would all been good. Reb Leib brings the Netziv from Sefer Hamek Davar that asks, why did the elders even go along with Moses and Aaron to Paro? They started going, and then they started like dropping like flies. They were like scared to continue. Why did they end up actually going in with Moses and Aaron to Paro? The Netziv says because when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to go on his mission, take a look at your screen. Chapter 3, verse 18 says, V'shami'u lekolecha, they're going to listen to your voice. Uvata, you will come, you and all the elders, El Melech Mitzrayim, to the king of Egypt. And you're going to tell him that Hashem, the God of the Jews, said to let us go for 3 days. The Netziv says, since the beginning of the verse, V'shami'u lekolecha, that they will listen to your voice. That never took place because they didn't listen to his voice. They listened to Aaron's voice. Hashem commanded them to listen for Moses himself to share it. Moses then had Aaron be the one that shares it. So since the beginning of the verse was not fulfilled, the next part of the verse that the elders will come as well is also not being fulfilled, says the Netziv. It's another powerful proof Reb Leib brings that it was supposed to be Moses, the one that shares the messages of Hashem to the Jewish people and to Paro. Reb Leib says the same way that the Jewish people didn't at first believe Moshe and Aaron, so too Paro didn't believe Moshe and Aaron. And that's why Paro says, I don't know who your God is, and I'm not letting the Jewish people go. Yes, Aaron was given to Moshe Rabbeinu because Moshe Rabbeinu was complaining that he had a lisp. But really, the intention of Hashem was that Moshe himself would be the one that shares to Bnei Israel and to Paro the message that they are about to be redeemed. And they would have believed him. Now, I think in my mind, the bigger chidush is not only the Jewish people would have believed him, even Paro would have believed him. Now, that's fascinating. Now, Reb Leib is going to answer a question which is going to have a real practical ramification for us all. And he asks, why didn't Moshe believe in the Jewish people that they would believe him? Why did he actually have Aaron speak instead of him? We see that Hashem clearly said that he should be the one. Why was he going 7 days back and forth trying to not take on this job? So listen to a fascinating answer. In all honesty, last year, not in Parashat Shemot, in another parasha, Rabbi Israel Meir and I were trying to figure out where it is. We didn't find it yet. But another one of the Divrei Torah, Reb Leib said this chidush in another context, but on Moshe Rabbeinu. This is fascinating. This is life-changing. He says, you know why Moshe Rabbeinu didn't trust the Jewish people? You know why he had a trust issue with them? Because he once was burnt by the Jewish people. Years before, 60 years prior, he was burnt by the Jewish people. He was thrown under the bus. When they spoke Lashon Hara about him, and they snitched to him. They snitched to Paro on him. The Tanan Aviram Jews. He was almost killed and forced to flee for his life because of the Jewish people. He had a trust issue. Now we often read, Reb Leib says, we often read the stories on the Torah and about the biblical characters in our Torah, and we sometimes forget that they are real human beings that have real feelings. They're actual people. So Reb Leib says, let's stop for a moment and try to imagine to ourselves, what's Moshe Rabbeinu feeling at this point? How did he feel when he was being thrown under the bus by his own brothers, the Tanan Aviram? Again, of course, they did not share the same parents, but his fellow Jews. He harbored these feelings of betrayal and hatred that were directed towards him. Reb Leib says those feelings, that trauma, is what led him to say, they won't believe me. Moshe had a trust issue with the Jewish people. He said, look how they act. How could they do that to me? Rightfully so. But the result and the consequence was Moshe Rabbeinu didn't trust him. He harbored that trauma, those ill feelings. Reb Leib says we find a similar concept by Yosef HaTzadik, that he indeed was a human being and had feelings. And he was a human being and not an angel. After Yaakov Avinu, their father, passed away, Yosef stopped inviting his brothers to dine with him. And then they came and they approached him and told him, please, don't take revenge on us, don't kill us, just take us as your slaves. Yosef started crying and he said, how could you suspect me? Nevertheless, says Reb Leib, based on Rashi's interpretation, that Yosef, even though he did not retaliate and take revenge against his brothers, but he still didn't invite them to dine with him. Reb Leib says, this is a proof that at the end of the day, Yosef was hurt with what his brothers did to him. They sold him at 17 years old. They plucked him out of a perfect world with his father. Yes, he took it all for the good. He understood it was Hashem's will to place him in the right place at the right time. But there was something there. It hurt. For this reason, Moshe Rabbeinu also harbored ill feelings in his heart. Because the Jewish people hurt him, they harmed him. He was refusing for 1 week to accept this, to agree to be the messenger, because Moshe Rabbeinu felt he really wasn't the right person for the job to lead the Jewish people, because he said he couldn't do it with a loving and a complete heart, full devotion. He knew he had that deep down inside of him. How could he commit to lead people that he doesn't trust? And Hashem then goes and tells him, don't worry, they will trust you. They will believe. But it was hard for Moshe Rabbeinu to let go of his feelings and to finally accept it. Hashem specifically wanted Moshe Rabbeinu for the reason that he was burnt by them once, to give him an opportunity to rectify it for them and for him. By Moshe Rabbeinu forgiving the Jewish people, Reb Leib explains that would have served as a complete atonement for why the Jewish people were even sent to exile in the first place, which was hatred between Yosef and his brothers. So yes, Moshe Rabbeinu experienced hatred his way. By him overcoming that and accepting and forgiving them, that would have brought a proper atonement. Number two, Hashem asks Moshe Rabbeinu, he doesn't command him to. If you go through this Shabbat on the verses, it never says that Hashem tziva or mitzaveh commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to take the job. He was only asking it from him. Why would he only ask it from him and not force him? Because only if Moshe Rabbeinu would accept the job willingly to lead the Jewish people, would he ever be able to do it with a complete and wholesome heart and love for them. So Hashem intended for Moshe to rectify this. But Moshe doesn't accept the position, and Hashem gets angry at him. At the end, Moshe Rabbeinu accepts it only when Hashem tells him that Aaron will join him as his spokesperson. But we see from this that because of one thing, one reason, one person, Moshe Rabbeinu harboring trauma for decades, caused two tremendous losses. Number one, that the Jewish people did not believe Moshe and Aharon at first. And number two, Paro did not believe Moshe and Aharon when they requested the Jewish people to be freed. Reb Leib says Moshe Rabbeinu's trauma, his feelings were hurt. And that is what caused Hashem to add Aaron as his spokesperson and add him into the equation. It's because of that there was disbelief from the Jewish people and from Paro. It all started because Moshe Rabbeinu didn't trust the Jewish people, so they couldn't believe him. And Hashem punished him for that. So it's a domino effect. Because Datan Aviram spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu, they endangered his life. That's number one. Number two, Moshe Rabbeinu was hurt. He harbored that trauma. He had to flee for his life. Number two. Number three, now he had these trust issues with the Jewish people. He couldn't trust them. And that means that they couldn't believe him. If he couldn't believe them, trust them, how could they trust him? Number four is that even trickled down, and Paro wouldn't even trust Moshe and Aaron. It's that severe. It's that serious. Now we see throughout Moshe Rabbeinu's career, as I'll call it, there was non-stop trust issues between the Jewish people and Moshe Rabbeinu. At first, as we see over here, he couldn't trust them, they couldn't trust him. And then later on, even after the signs were shown to the Jewish people, 7 short days later, when they're standing, 7 short days after the Exodus, they're standing and they're cornered by the Sea of Reeds. They tell him again, what, did you take us out here in the desert to die? What's the point of that? And then it flips. Next morning after the splitting of the sea, Vayaminu b'Hashem u'Moshe avdo. They believed in him, as we say in Az Yashir. 3 weeks later, they want food. They don't believe in him again. They're complaining. They're standing at Mount Sinai. They're great. They're believing with him. Then the golden calf. They have trust issues again. Korach, the spies. It was literally a belief roller coaster. All because Moshe Rabbeinu harbored that trauma and couldn't let go of it and trust the Jewish people. So there's a couple lessons. There's 4 brief lessons I want to pull out from this that are really practical for us all, and it's something hard to hear. Number 1 is we have to be very careful what we say and how we make other people feel. Because based on what we say, it will come true. We're never allowed to say, I can't, or that's impossible, or no way, because then it will never happen. By Moses uttering the words, they will not believe me, they didn't. And they had a lifelong struggle trusting Hashem, or rather trusting Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem through Moshe. It's so important for us to understand this. Don't utter words that are not positive. Don't utter words that are negative. Don't utter words that are constricting. Because if you limit yourself, if you say you're limited, you will be limited. And the power is the exact opposite. You say you can do something, you'll be able to do it. Don't ever say, I'm too old, I'll never get married. Don't ever say, I'm not smart enough, I'll never understand it. Don't say, I'm so unlucky that I will never achieve success. God forbid. You say you're smart, empowered, inspired, able, capable. And it's going to be. That will actually happen. So that's what, that at Moses' level, that was one issue that he did. He said, he decreed, they are not going to believe me. That's what actually happened. Number 2, trauma is a real thing and can have absolutely devastating effects. We have to make sure to apologize to others and be careful that if we have harmed or hurt someone, to make it up. Because we don't really understand the effect, the long-term effects that can provide for that person and descendants and even ourselves. So always make it good with others. Number 3, try not to allow negative things that other people say and do to us affect us. So it's like 2 sides of the same coin. On one hand, don't go out and shell out negativity or hurt other people's feelings because it's going to cause trauma. On the flip side, if someone does do something bad to you, either try not to let it penetrate, and if it does, work on that trauma. Work on yourself. Overcome the hardship and those ill feelings. Because if you don't, they're going to have long-term effects and it's going to hurt. Last but not least, as that's taken us to the beginning of this, is that we have to remember the severity of Lashon Hara, of slander, which is the source of so many evil and bad things. As we see here by the Tana Aviram, it was because of what they did that Moshe Rabbeinu even felt slighted and then harbored that trauma and then couldn't trust the Jewish people. So again, the main lesson is be careful what you say. Don't hurt others or leave things untied with others. And if someone does so to you, try to work on that and don't let it set into a traumatic event that's going to have devastating, everlasting effects. And number 4, the severity of Lashon Hara and how destructive it actually is. B'ezrat Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help us in the merit of Leib Heyman, that we will be able to overcome any struggles we have in our life, whether they are inflicted by other human beings or if it's the will of Hashem, something nothing to do with another person, that we will use those times and those hardships as moments of growth and opportunity for success, opposed to harboring that trauma and those ill feelings. That will make us, B'ezrat Hashem, become the greatest individuals that we possibly could be. Amen v'amen.